Cindy here with Dare to Be Artsy, and we are excited to have Lori Craig with us today. If you guys love to color with alcohol markers, Lori is the one that's going to be able to teach you guys some great little tips and talk about the OLO markers. Lori is with Global Creative Inc., and they are the manufacturer and distributor of OLO markers. She has been teaching teaching alcohol coloring for about 16 years. So she really knows her stuff, and I want to have her jump in and share with you a little bit about the OLO markers and why they're so awesome. Here at Dare to Be Artsy, we have them on our website now, as well as in our studio here in Overland Park, Kansas. So if you guys are in this area, come on out. We're excited to have the new colors as well, and we have there will be you can get some more. Well, we have some of the product in. We have some of all of the new colors, but it's so popular. They're going really fast that we will be restocking again. I think they'll be back out in August. So get them while you can, and then we'll just have a little bit of delay. We'll do a pre-order for the rest of them. So, Lori, tell us about you and tell us about these awesome markers.
Sure. Well, I'm excited to be here. Cindy and I have been talking about this for several months, so it's awesome that our schedules kind of meshed up, and thank you for having me. So I am, like Cindy, I'm a Kansas creative. I live in the Wichita, Kansas area. I'm actually from Kansas City, and I can attest Cindy has got the cutest little shop. So if you find yourself in the KC Metro or in Overland Park, be sure to stop in there. I was shocked at just the variety and how much product is in there and all the fun ideas and inspiration. So you'll love it. You'll love it if you stop in there. I have been a paper crafter probably for 25 years. I started in scrapbooking and stamping, and I just kind of got hooked and have been involved in the industry for about the last 20 years. I have done a lot of different things, but I've done design work. I have done some illustration work. I have taught alcohol marker coloring. I actually traveled around the country for a long time, for about 9-10 years, teaching alcohol marker coloring. And so it's a lot of fun. Like I said, I live in Kansas. I have 2 adult daughters and a new puppy that's about 5 months old. So that's keeping us really busy. And I'm just happy to be here. I work for Global Creative Inc., and we are the North American distributor for Corrine Marker, which is a different medium. It's either an acrylic pigment pen or a brush marker watercolor product. And then we have OLO, which is a product we introduced about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And it's just been super popular, very well received. It's a beautiful quality product. And so I thought you want me to kind of turn my camera around, Cindy, and see what we
already have a question right off the bat. All right. How do you store them, horizontal or vertical? So while
whichever works for you. So the thing that's really nice about OLO is the product design is an airtight cap. And so you can store them flat or horizontal. It's just whatever works for your space. So great question that comes up all the time. And I'm happy to always tell people, you do you. Whatever works for you is great. So
Lori is getting her camera switched around here. So when we see her with her desktop, we'll switch back. And you'll I don't see you back up yet, Lori. So give me a heads up.
Okay, just a minute, and let me see here what I can.
Perfect.
Let's see here. Okay, I think I did it.
Yay! Okay, there we go. Let's get you full screen here. Hold on. There. All right. Awesome.
Okay, gosh, I have to say I'm a little impressed that I got that to be kind of painless. So, um, but yeah, kind of what I thought we talked about and what I thought we might do today is just talk a little bit about the product and OLO and what makes it different, why it is special. It is different from anything else that is on the market. It has a patented technology to it. And then talk a little bit about the color line, show you some samples, maybe do a couple of blending techniques. So the first thing that I always like to start with when I am talking about OLO is I like to talk about what's inside the marker and what you can't see, because I think that that's really important to how OLO functions compared to other markers or products you might have used. Let me see if I can pull out my little dummy marker here, and I should have kind of had this ready, but in one of the things that's unique about OLO, or the thing that makes it so special, is the technology that's inside the barrel. In a traditional marker, in a traditional alcohol marker, anything other than OLO, the technology had not changed for many, many years. And so if you would break that marker open and pull it out, you would have a felt wadding inside that would regulate the ink flow from the barrel of the marker to the nib. That's just how it's been done. And one of the things that does is this felt wadding always harbors a large percentage of the ink, about 30 to 35% of the ink that initially comes into the marker. And so it's just trapped in there. You can never use it or consume it from nib to paper. And then eventually, even if the marker is refillable, over time you'll have some drying out of the wadding, and then that can affect the way that ink flows from the barrel to the nib. So the idea with OLO is that it is a free ink technology. So this particular marker that I'm holding is unique. It's got a clear body to it, just so I can demonstrate to you. And I don't know if you should be able to see that on the camera, but inside there is a thin chamber in the center, but for the most part that ink is just really nice and fluid. There's nothing in there that harbors and holds that ink. So what happens is it is a continuous feed of ink from the chamber through that channel in the center out through the nib. And so when you go to use OLO, you just get a very nice, smooth color onto your paper, your cardstock, as you are coloring. You can kind of see that, I did that right on top of my color chart. But you can see how smooth this is right away without having to go back over it or reblend. And that's because the marker itself is putting forth a continuous feed of ink. So it allows for very smooth coloring. It also allows you to color really large spaces without that color dropping off. I don't know, Cindy, did you, when you were in school, you and I are close to the same age, and mm-hmm. I used to just like hope that we would have indoor recess so then I could color. I remember specifically, very vividly in 5th and 6th grade, I remember just wanting indoor recess all the time so that I could color. And at that time, this is a kind of a rudimentary example, but I had Crayola markers. Everyone has, the 8-pack or the 16-pack or what have you. And inevitably, you would start coloring, and even back then I was coloring big rainbows. I've always loved mm-hmm. the Roy G. Biv. You would start coloring, but about the time you made yourself way to the top of the arc, that color would start waning because the nib, the felt liner inside, was not pushing ink through that nib fast enough to let you get smooth color over the whole thing. And OLO, you won't have that issue because the nib, the ink is continuously feeding to that nib. So that's one of the first things that is unique about OLO. and makes it very special. The entire product is manufactured in Japan. The Japanese are very well revered for their commitment to quality. And they make beautiful, beautiful marker product there. And so we're very happy and thrilled that this product is 100% manufactured in Japan. So what this free flow ink technology allows is it's a closed-in system. This is what we would consider to be one full marker. So if you would come into Cindy's store or order off of her website, and you would pick a marker up, this is a G1.5. This is going to be a full marker that you purchase. So it's got a full marker's worth of ink. This is the same amount of ink that's comparable to any premium brand alcohol marker. And you're going to use 90 to 92% of the ink that's in this marker compared to 65% to 70% of something comparable because of that free flow ink technology. So when you pick up a marker and you get G1.5, this is what's going to be in your hand or sent to you. So this is be a little bit cumbersome to hold and color, right? I want something a little bit longer. So the concept and the idea was born that we would sell the markers in pairs or sell the markers with a brush chisel combination so that people could have different nibs. Black indicates that this is a brush nib. I do use the chisels quite frequently. And so on the other end of that marker, I have a dark gray, which is a traditional chisel marker. So I can have both of those together, and I have each end or each marker is dedicated to one color. A lot of people in paper crafting really prefer the brush marker. They say that's all they use. So if they pick up that G1.5, they might pick up another complementary color. So
that's
this is
kind of what I end up doing.
Yep. And then you have blending pairs or alternate colors on each end of the marker. So you end up being able to have twice the color because remember, each side is a full marker's worth of ink. And each side now is a brush nib. And you have two colors that either blend together or not, depending on how you personally set them up. That's all your choice. And you get to purchase them. We call it your marker, your way. So I do use my chisel nibs. I like them really, I'm primarily a paper crafter, but I like them for large spaces because they allow me to color very large spaces quickly. But then now I have two markers on one ring. So, which leads usually to questions about refillability and are you able to refill them? Because quite frequently alcohol markers are refillable. And they are refillable just in a different sense than what you might be accustomed to. So can I show you a demo on that?
That'd be great.
What do you think, Cindy? Would that be
That'd
okay?
Be great. Yes, that'd be great.
Let me put my pieces and parts back together too. So otherwise, at the end of our time together, I'll just have a real mess. So what I am holding here this is a white barrel, and this is the OLO 0 marker. And 0 is what most people commonly would call a colorless blender pen, a blender pen. That's a little bit misleading in alcohol because the blender pen doesn't actually blend color together. It's more of a pusher to kind of manipulate the ink on your paper. But we call this marker 0 for its artistic value. There's 0 saturation, there's 0 value. It's just a clear ink, and it can be used to do special techniques or color correction. But it's very good for the demonstration on this. This is a refill cartridge. So here I have the marker in my right hand, and I have a refill cartridge in my left hand. When my marker is dry, needs to be changed, I simply take the cap off of the refill. I move the nib, and I move the cap to the marker. And now I have a brand new marker's worth of ink. I haven't had to pour anything, weigh anything, measure anything, drip anything, clean up any mess, and I don't have to store any extra bottles of ink. So it's very, this is probably one of my favorite features about this line. You know, we talked about the fact that I have taught marker coloring for a long time. And for 9 or 10 years, I taught a series of classes, Cindy, that I would travel around the country. I would leave on Thursday, and I would fly into wherever that city was going, wherever that class was going to be. Originally, when I started doing it, they had asked me if I wanted to be the Midwest instructor. And I was like, sure. So the first year I taught in Seattle, Miami, and Australia. I don't know if you have any international friends that have joined you tonight, but those places are not the Midwest where Cindy and I live. But I loved it. But I would fly in and out. I would teach all day Friday. I would teach all day Saturday, and then I would fly home on Sunday. And I had 12 sets of 72 markers that I traveled with, and I was responsible for maintaining those, which meant I was responsible to kind of keep them cleaned up and then to refill them. And so to refill those markers, my kids knew when it was marker refill time, I mean, it was like a 40-hour job. It took a long time to do that. This is so fast. You know, it's just, move that nib from the nib to the new cartridge, which has led to some people use their markers this way. A full marker, if you purchase a full brush tip marker, that will retail for about $4.10. Some places have them, a couple cents higher. Some places may have them a couple cents lower. But $4.10 for a full marker's worth of ink with a beautiful Japanese brush nib. The ink refill cartridge, which is a full marker's worth of ink, retails, meaning that's what the customer pays in your store, for $2.69. So you're only buying the refills for exactly what you need at the time that you need them.
That's great.
But what I've noticed some people doing in classes and shows and in talking to people and chatting with people on Instagram and Facebook, some people like having a dedicated color in their hand at one time. They don't need the chisel marker. They don't necessarily need to buy 2 brush markers to make that happen, which would be somewhat wasteful. So they have been purchasing the brush markers and then the refill cartridge and having the refill on the back end. The cap, it's on the back end while you're coloring. And so that's also an option too. There's just a lot of fun things you can do. We can simplify. It can be very simple. You can also do fun things that work just for you in your space. So you said you have yours paired up in blending partners, right, Cindy?
I do, yeah. I tend to do a light and dark together. Yeah.
Yep.
But I like that.
I think that's awesome. Yeah, I think, it's whatever, different strokes for different folks. So however it kind of works for you. Can we talk a little bit about the color chart and the color system and how your customers can choose color? And
yes, and we are going to, we will hopefully this weekend have the color charts available to download for free. They're just not on the website yet, but they will be available.
Sure. And we've got a couple of different charts. So, and I'm gonna unlock those for you, Cindy, so you can share whatever you think will work for your customers. Great. This particular chart just shows the entire line of 160 colors. As Cindy mentioned, we have 32 new colors that were introduced in April, and so this shows 32 new colors. So this is nice for people that are adding 32 that maybe used them before, but they are also incorporated in this chart of 160. And then we have another chart, and I apologize because I don't have it to show you, but it's a chart specifically for customers that like the pairing of different colors on their marker. And so that chart has 80 circles on it, and each one is split in half. And then underneath it has a line. So what it's designed to do, and it's blank, it doesn't have preset numbers on it. It doesn't have preset color numbers on it. It's designed that when you in your space, if you pick up your markers when you get them at home and you say, okay, I really want to pair these two colors together, Y2.3 and Y2.2, that specific chart
I did. That is
set up.
pulled up. Yeah, that is one that I was putting on our site. Yep.
Yep. So that one would be, that chart is just full of 80 circles, so it holds the whole line of color. But what it lets you do is kind of identify how you have paired your markers. So what in your space, and I'm not going to color all the way to the line because that is not a alcohol safe pen. Let's see. But what that lets me do then in my space is if I am working and I pick up Y2.2, I know that I want the 2.3. Then I know I can look for in my storage 2.2 or 2.3, and that will get me to both of those markers. So we'll be sure and get that chart to you because that's a very popular one.
Yeah. That was a good question because somebody was asking about the storage earlier here. They were saying if you've got the color on one end, but if you've got two different colors, so having that dual color chart with you is a handy way to know what's on the other side.
Yep. And the other thing is, as you pick up your markers and you work with them, you also become very comfortable and familiar. You learn what colors you like to blend together and what your most popular colors that you personally use are. So it becomes a little bit intuitive to know which ones to look for. I mean, it's just like if you have, if you've got your favorite eyeshadow that you like to put on and you've got one of those dual palettes that's, Maybelline inevitably puts, I know if I'm looking for one color, I know what's in both of those instinctively. And it kind of becomes the same way when you look at the markers. Okay, if I'm looking for BG 2.3, okay, I have that connected to BG 2.1 because I use those colors together all the time. So let's talk a little bit about the color numbering system, Cindy, and help people understand how to choose colors and what those color numbers mean.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pull it.
And then
go ahead.
Here's another question out here, and that just might play into that. So, for the color families, is the color family improving for better shading and blending? Like adding, we have certain colors out there. How are they adding new colors to give you some of the
okay, yes,
what to put together?
Excellent question. And I'm going to let me kind of work toward the answer on that. Okay,
perfect.
If you can give me just a second. So let's see, I'm going to start pulling out some colors that are, I think, easy to see. This is an R0.5. And I want to just kind of break this down and tell you what those colors mean. Let me see if I can zoom in just a little bit. Oh, I can. Okay, so R0.5. Okay, so this first letter always stands by itself, and this tells me what color family my marker is in. So this R equals red. R B blue, BG blue green, V is violet. The one thing that I think is possibly unique to the OLO color families are all of our earth tones fall in the O or the YO color family. So your browns and deep yellows and umbers and they're all going to fall in the orange or the yellow-orange color family, maybe some of them into the yellows alone. But they're not going to be, that is where they would fall on the color wheel, and so we have them appropriately placed. The first number, so this is a 0, it is not a O. The first number, this tells me what the hue is of that particular marker. So R0 means that it is very pure, a very pure red marker, okay? And then the last digit tells me what the value of that color is. The value is light to dark. So that 5 tells me that while this is an R0 hue, pure color, 5 is mid-range. So it's going to be a nice, bold, juicy red. Contrary, this is an R0.4, R0.3, R0.2. Am I still in?
Yep.
Might have to, if I get out of frame, just yell at me.
You're doing great.
And then here is an R0.1. So when you look at these colors, you can see that the family stays the same, the hue stays the same, and the number changes. So that's important to me primarily for me personally, is these colors make up what we would consider to be a natural blending group.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if you are looking for colors that blend well together and you're just starting your alcohol marker journey, you want to look for colors that are in natural blending groups. So these happen to be the R0s. Our color range is full of natural blending groups. You have R0s, then it moves to the R1s, R2s, skips up to the R5s. And if I am picking up colors or looking for colors, then I would try to find colors that stay in that natural blending group. So here's, let's see. I'm going to lift this up so it's closer to the camera.
What is the highest value? Mary was asking.
The highest value in some of these is going to be an 8, or there might be a couple of 9s. I'd have to look. Some 7s. We have some 7s and 8s. Okay. But here's an example of that same concept in the BGs. You have 2.1, 2.3, 2.4, 2.5, 2.7. This one on the end goes to another kind of color run. But these colors would make a beautiful, a beautiful natural blending group. Mm-hmm. So what I like to help people do when they're picking out colors is I say, look for a color that you're really drawn to, that you think is beautiful, and then pick a blending partner or 2 that go with it. So if I was to pick up BG 2.4 and I wanted natural blending groups to 2.4, then I would maybe pick up 2.1 or 2.3, and then maybe 2.5, 2.7. If you're just starting out, I would suggest that you try and keep these colors as close, maybe keep them as close together as possible, not skipping, because that's going to make it easy for you to blend. The other thing that I like to share with people is, I think one of the number one mistakes that if you're on a budget and trying to be really conscientious about how you're adding color, one of the things that I think is really important is this BG 2.4 is my color. I love that color. I buy clothing in that color. I buy accessories and home decor in that color. I mean, that's just I love it. So if I'm brand new and I'm just kind of learning how to color, I'm really drawn to BG 2.4 and I'm picking blending partners, I like to encourage people to purchase the lighter blending partner. If you can only get one blending partner, purchase the lighter blending partner first. That will allow you to do some shading. It will allow the BG 2.4 to really pop on your page, and it will allow you to blend out to a highlight. Sometimes if you pick up really dark valued colors with those like 5, 7s, and you don't have anything to blend lighter, it can look really heavy on your paper. And those darker colors I tend to use in much smaller spaces and, for lack of a better word, quantity in my when I'm coloring. I use these to do my deepest shading, and generally that's reserved for a very small surface area in the overall image. So ideal is to have 3 colors that kind of blend together, but if you can only do 2, my encouragement is to pick the color you like and then buy a lighter blending color to that. And I'm still going to get to your question about the color range.
Okay, and here
and
was a
how we
question.
add colors. Okay.
Perfect. A question on that when she's looking at this is Melissa asking about the BG 2.3 and the BG 2.4. Is there enough of a difference between those colors? Like, do you?
They are pretty close. They are pretty close to each other. So,
if you want
it's
more of a
gonna be-
range, you would just go down to maybe the 2 point.
yes, if you want more
Like,
range,
do
you
a
could probably go in that particular specific instance. You probably could do BG 2.4 and go to BG 2.3. The 2.1. The 2.3 is very close.
Okay.
So that is. So let me show you kind of the difference and how changing. We've talked about how changing that last number affects your color. Let's talk about how changing the middle number or the first number affects your color. Okay, so still in the red family, you can see here that the R5s, the R is the same. We've moved from a 0 to a 5, and look how much more muted these particular colors are and how much less saturated they are. There's a lot more gray in the 5 as you jump from a 0 up to the 5. And then you still get that change in value from 5, 7, 5, and 3. So that kind of gives you an idea of if you like the Roy G. Biv and you color a lot of bright flowers, a lot of pastels, you probably are going to really look for markers that start with the letter, and then the first number is maybe a 1, 2, or a 3. If you like saturated, desaturated, more muted tones, maybe more Victorian type colors, a little bit darker scheme, you're probably going to be drawn to markers that have a starting number somewhere in the 4, 5, 6 range. So when I am picking colors, I keep that in mind. I keep that first number in mind. So if I'm looking for colors that go with these R0s, and I need greens that go with the R0s, I can look over here. I've got options in G0s. I've got options in G1s. I do have options in G5 that may or may not work depending on what I'm coloring. But the same thing in the blues. I'm probably going to look for blues that start with a 0 as the first number, maybe up into the 2s. But I'm probably, unless it's the 4th of July, and that's my favorite holiday, I'm probably not going to pick up R0s and B4s because I have a really desaturated run of blues with a really bright true red.
That's
So
really good information.
So as we add colors, this is our color range where we've just added these 32 new colors. They've just come out in April, and we have more colors that we're working on for 2025. One thing about OLO is the team that put this product together has been in the alcohol marker business for many, many years. So they understand the color system. They understand not the color system, but they understand the color wheel. And the color wheel really is this sphere of color. It's not a flat linear space. When you look at saturation and pure color, less saturated, muted colors, it kind of encompasses like a sphere. And so understanding that and understanding alcohol markers, the entire potential range of OLO was laid out before the first markers were created. So as we add colors, like we just did in April, the same color numbering system is going to make sense as we look to add those colors in. So you have the YG1s that get added in. There's a space for them. It's appropriate. The color flows. It makes sense when you're looking for it. It's not like we're going to think up of some Pantone color that comes out next year and go, oh, that's a beautiful color. And, oh, we don't have a place in our numbering system for that to work. So we're going to assign it some obscure number. When we add colors to this, consumers and our stores can have confidence that those colors will always drop in and make sense on the color wheel according to the same numbering system of color family, hue, and value.
That's great.
So I think that answers I hope that answers the question for that person that we kind of put off at the beginning of our time. But if it didn't, Cindy, and she asks more, be sure and tell me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
But any other questions that have popped up?
No, those are covering what I've seen so far. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
You want to explain the handle?
Yeah.
Someone did talk about something about some people are, do use just the half, but tell them about the option there.
Yeah, if you are someone who likes the idea of having a dedicated color in your hand at all times, we have an artistic handle that we offer as an accessory. They're sold in a 2-pack, and it's a little bit longer than than conjoining 2 markers. Okay, so it's about an extra inch off the back. It's got a tapered end. There's no ink in this. So if you happen to see these in the store or you see them and you're out and about, this is just an empty, hollow handle. And it is a brush handle that will extend the length of a single marker. And so now you have full control over the whole length of the marker without putting a different color or nib off the back. So when we were talking about these in production, and when we were, kind of getting everything ready to go, which is a long process, as you kind of are like, okay, well, this would be fun. And so we kind of thought, oh, this would be fun. People might like this. And it was honestly kind of like a novelty, like, well, if people like it, that'd be great. And if people don't, they can buy markers, and people love this handle. So we sell a lot of these handles, and there are people who then, put all of their collection, they have a handle for each one. So I don't know that we ever thought that would happen. It's great because, it really is just about making art fun and therapeutic for us, Cindy, you and I, we usually probably when we're creating, we're under the gun for deadlines or what have you. So, but there's still something super therapeutic about just setting down to color and, being able to do that. So whether you like brush in different colors, if you like a brush and a traditional chisel marker, if you like a brush and a handle or a chisel and a handle. Right now the brush and the chisel are the two options that we have for nibs. I do get asked frequently about a potential fine tip nib, and that is something that's we're working on. That's not a secret. So I don't know when we'll have that to share, but hopefully sooner than later. But lots of options for you to pick what works in your space.
Right.
I think the biggest takeaway that I like to share is the value or the quality. First and foremost is the quality, because of the way that it's constructed, the thought process to it, how it's manufactured, the raw materials that are used. It's just a beautiful quality alcohol marker. The second thing that I'd like to share is the value at $4.10 per color for a full marker's worth of ink. That is really a considerable value when you look at other markers that might be in the same quality class. You would pay almost twice as much for the same amount of ink. And then because of this free flow ink delivery system, you're going to end up using 90% of the ink out of this versus 65 to 70% out of a traditional marker. So the quality and the value are really the main takeaways for me. The thing that I love about it and make me happy to, I don't want to talk to people and suggest products that I wouldn't use myself. That's not about me. I want to know it's something that I can rely on, and that it's going to work well for me. And so that makes it fun to do this job. So
yeah. So Ellen asked, "Is the brush nib stiff?" And we did get someone that mentioned no, but you can kind of show her it's got a nice feel, so you can easily go thick and thin when you're coloring with it.
Yeah, I'm going to use this dark color. This is a really dark marker, and I would probably not pick it up to color, these images, but it does make for nice, vivid demonstration on the camera. But the brush, it's a firm brush nib, but it has some flex to it. So you can, use just the tip if you want to get into smaller spaces. You can use the wide brush if you need to, cover a lot of real estate, as I like to say. Just really nice. My markers, I've got one of the very first sets that came out. As you might expect, I had work waiting to be colored as we got our first shipment several years ago, and I have not replaced any of my nibs. So if that tells you anything, I do color very regularly. I color samples for work. I color samples for trade shows. I'm on a design team. I do some guest design work. So I really have used my markers a lot. And from a refill standpoint, I think that I have refilled maybe 3 colors: BG 2.3 or 2.1, and a Y0 2.3 maybe. And that might be about it. Maybe one of those light R0s. But from a usability and amount of ink that's in the marker, I've not refilled hardly anything. So
here's another question for you. Is well, here Melissa was asking, is there a COPIC OLO conversion chart available when you're coloring along with a video that may be COPIC driven? And the other question was, is there a learning curve going from COPIC to OLO?
Okay, so I think those are 2 different questions. So first I will say is there are some color conversion charts available. Cindy, let me see if I can get my hands on one for you. I know a couple of retailers have done their own, And I want to say that one of the girls in our art department was working, she was doing some of her own investigation.
Okay.
So, yes, there are some charts available that show you a conversion and a color choice, which I'm glad that you asked that, because the other thing that I wanted to share is there are colors in this particular range of marker that aren't available in other ranges. If you have COPIC or other brands of alcohol marker in your collection, this ink will work very well. You can blend them together. You can use them together on an image and color with them. So the idea is that there are colors available specifically in the pinks and the purples and in the yellows that aren't necessarily, you won't find those in other ranges, with the idea that you can, pick up one or two and, add them in and play with them and see what you like. I think that is, and just, and add them to what you already have. I'm really an advocate of using what we have. So just pick up a few and add them in if that's your thing. And then if you like them, then it can come, you can have a conversion chart to flip in. And if you decide that you like OLO, as you need to refill, you can actually buy the OLO marker cheaper than you can, purchase a refill of other brands and add those in as well. So the other thing about these 32 new colors is there's also pinks and purples that got added. When we were talking about these new colors, we wanted to add a substantial number. Cindy, as a retailer that it's really hard when ranges add just one or two things. It's hard for you as a retailer to okay, how am I going to display that? And how are people really going to come to me to just buy two $4 items, right? And make a purchase for that. So and people were like, oh, we want more greens, we want more purples, we need more skin tones, we need more skin tones. We would hear that a lot. So that 32 edition is completely driven by consumer request from the initial launch. More purples, more pinks, more greens, and skin tone. So, which I think is fun. How to color with them, and do they color differently than other markers that you might have used? So one thing that I do different with OLO, which is different from how I used other brands and how I taught specifically for several years, is I color dark to light with my OLO. That ink flow, the ink flow of these is very generous. And the reason, if you color light to dark with other markers, the reason that you've been taught to lay the light color down first, whether it was explained to you or not, is that the blending happens when the paper is wet. So as you lay color down with your alcohol marker, to get those nice meld of color, you need that moisture in the paper. And so with other markers, I would start with my light, and then I would bring in my midtone, and I would blend that out, and then I would add some darker, and then I would blend that out. I have found that primarily with OLO, I don't have to do that. I start right with my darkest color, and I have enough moisture in the paper at that point that it will blend for me. So let me show you kind of what I'm talking about. When I get ready to color, I got a natural blending pair here. Can you see? Just making sure you can see me. Okay. I have a G5.1 and a G5.3. And I'm going to use these markers back and forth to do my blending. So I've got the caps off of both of them, and I usually leave the caps off while I'm working with those two colors. And the reason I do that is because of the unique ink system inside OLO. This is a closed end. Remember, this is one single color, and this is a closed back end. So These caps are designed to be tight, and that's to maintain the integrity of the ink in your nib over a very long period of time. So I don't want to cap and recap, cap and recap, cap and recap, cap and recap in a short period of time. That extra pull of that cap, if I click it and pull, that can wick extra ink out of the marker. So I usually just take them off, and while I'm coloring my images, I leave that off. So put my glasses on. I've been okay. So here I'm going to start with the darker of the two colors, which is the G 5.3, and I'm going to feather in just a little bit of that G 5.3. You can see that I have not added very much of that color at all. And then I'm going to come back with the 5.1, and I'm just going to draw right over the top of that, and it will blend right out. And the other thing I like to do is leave, now this isn't a shading lesson on like necessarily where your shading and shadow would go. We're talking more about coloring. So it might not look super realistic when I color this, but from a blending standpoint, I try to leave a little bit of white space. If I want a really strong highlight when I'm coloring, I try to leave a little bit of my paper white right from the very beginning, because I can always come back at the end and give it a swipe of my lightest color if I want it to have color. But if I want something that's got a really crisp white highlight, it's much more natural and easier to do that than it is to come back in with the zero or the colorless blender and recreate that at the end. And then if I want to deepen that up, I can just come back over the top again, and I just would work back and forth with my dark. I would start with my dark color and then come over the top of it with that lighter and just draw that out to get that nice blend from dark all the way to the light as I'm working on my image. So this would be what I would call a natural blend with like a natural blending group. I would start with my dark, and I'm just applying the dark color in a little bit of the real estate, and then I would come back over the top of that with my lighter marker and draw it out to kind of shift that darker dye across the paper. And I usually color in one direction, so it's a flicking motion. I would add the darker color and kind of see how there's points at the end of where my marker's lifting up. And then I would come back with the lighter color, and I would just extend those flicks right over the top of that.
Lori, I forgot you can't see any of these comments or anything. You're getting lots of hearts and thumbs up, and you're getting a wonderful training lesson. So
oh, good.
I'm learning myself, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot you can't see all that love.
Oh, well, I'm glad that it is helpful. So that is what I would call a traditional blending when I use two markers like that.
That's great.
So we have and this, when we talked about in color selection, and if you've joined us late, you catch us on the replay, because we spent a lot of time talking about color selection and how to choose colors across the color families like blues, greens, reds that work well together, and how to pick blending groups. So this is one of those examples where we have the G 5.3, and then we work to the G 5.1 to use that as our lighter color to blend it out. Sometimes you might not have space in your image that you can do that natural blending, right? You've got really small flowers, and it's hard to get in there with a couple of markers and make that nice variation of color. So why don't I show you one more blending technique that I like to do. Let me see if I can find some colors here that will work well for this.
We also had a question about paper, and I mentioned that we have your expressive.
Yes. Let me, I'm going to come back to the paper thing before we might even run a few minutes long, if that's okay, because I think that's important for people to know and understand. And I have some examples that I can show you some different things.
Awesome.
So, okay, in this flower here, and I didn't pre-do this, so I hope that this is going to work like I think it works. But this flower is somewhat small. And so I might want a little bit of shading, where that flower center meets. Traditionally, that's in my world, that's going to be where my darkest color is, because those petals are kind of pulled tight into the center of the flower. But I'm going to use two different colors. Let me get the, okay. So here I have a Y0 2.3 and I have an R03. So these are both about the same value. So meaning they're about the same space on the color wheel, ending in that 3. So I'm going to pick those up, and they're not too far apart from a hue perspective either. These would naturally work in an image if, even if I'm trying to stay really bright, because your 0 and your 2 aren't that far apart. But on this flower, and I like to use the chisel for this technique. You can use the brush as well. But I'm going to use the yellow as my paintbrush. And if I wanted to blend these two colors together in this pretty small space, what I can do is, you can't really damage the nib of your marker. So I'm going to use my yellow as a paintbrush, and I'm going to pick up some color off of the end of the red and see how that comes. This is a yellow marker, but it's coming out of now it's red because I have picked up red ink. And then I'm just going to run that off on the side. And then I'll come back over the top with my yellow and kind of blend that out. So I have this flower that's more pink in the center that blends out to a yellow on the edges.
I love that.
And so you can pick up, complementary colors. And this allows you to do some unique blending techniques in smaller spaces. So, and then if you want to add some depth with that red, you can always bring the red and go right over the top and add a little bit more depth in the center. So we call that tip-to-tip blending. You're not going to damage your marker. You just use whatever I'd used as a paintbrush. When I'm done at the end, I just rub it off on some scrap paper and good to go. Let's talk about paper for just a second, and then I know we're getting, I have a couple of, so the paper that I'm using here, and Cindy has this in the store, is called Express It Blending Card. And I love this paper with OLO. I've used it for many, many years. I've actually probably been using this since the early 2010, 2011. It's a very crisp, bright white paper. It has a very smooth finish to it, and it blends beautifully. The thing that I like about it for OLO, if you are learning, is that it blends beautifully, but it also tends to hold the color right where you put it down. It's very tight weave and a smooth finish, so there's not a lot of ink spreading that happens in the paper. It holds it right where I put it. So if I'm stamping and I've got my stamped lines, that's another thing. I was going to say, one of the things I really like about your images, Cindy, is the line weight. It's not super thick, but it's also thick enough that I find it easy to color those images without it.
Oh, good.
You know what I mean? Sometimes you have lines that are, and if you are heavy-handed and just learning, you want to look for line art that maybe has a little bit thicker line to it. And Cindy's stamps are a really nice line weight. So here's kind of what I mean by line weight. You know, it's not pencil paper thin there. So you've got a little bit of leeway to kind of help you stay in those lines and control your coloring. But this is the Express It blending card, and this is going to hold my color right where I put it down. This, okay. It's very bright and vibrant. Let me see. I'm going to show you another paper that I like is the Neenah Classic Crest Solar White. And I was going to see if I have a sample of that that's cut. Just a second. I usually keep it cut in spades. So, okay. So this is the Neenah Classic Crest Solar White. And I think that you might even be able to see the difference as I'm holding these up. This is the Neenah. This is the Express It. I use both of these papers. I like both of them. I use them. I'm not one over the other. I can pick either one up and use them. The thing that I like about the Neenah is I like the creamy color of it, and it's a little bit thicker. I use 110 pound. This is probably about a 70 pound paper. It's in grams, so I don't know what the conversion is, but it's a little bit thinner. The thing about the Neenah is that it is softer, and I think you might even be able to see that in the texture. It doesn't have the same sheen to it that the Express It does. What happens with if I'm heavy-handed, and so with the Classic Crest Solar White, if I'm not careful, sometimes I can get some ink bleeding on the Neenah paper. So my recommendation is to try a couple of different things if you're getting a feel for it and you're learning alcohol marker coloring. You know, the thing about coloring is there's 3 points to the coloring. There is the medium, and this is not just OLO, this is any medium that you want to learn. You've got the medium, which is your paint, your pencil, your pen, your marker color. You have your surface or your canvas. And so that's your paper selection. There's so many different types of paper. There's comic paper, scrapbook paper, Neenah, Classic Crest Solar White, the Express It blending card. Different people will have different papers that they like. And then is the artist. Okay, so this triangle is pretty much equally weighted. But if I change any one of these 3 things, if I change my application as the artist, or if I change my medium, or if I change my surface, that triangle it's not an I don't know what the geometric term is, but it's not equal anymore, right? You might suddenly, if I'm changing the surface, now all of a sudden my triangle might be out here because I've changed to a different paper. Or maybe this is my marker medium and I go to a watercolor. So now my triangle changes yet again. So my point is that all 3 of those things affect how your medium looks on paper. So what works for me and what is my preference might not be Cindy's preference, because even if our marker is the same and our paper is the same, the way we are using the product might not be the same because of the way we hold the marker, the way that we put the marker on the paper. So I just like my short little thing in that long, drawn out blabbering is to just practice different surfaces to see what you like. And if you like the way that something reacts, then keep working with that same paper, because as you go to learn and expand your technique range, if you change your paper, you might not be able to do the same techniques. So like I said, the Neenah blends really beautifully, but it's because it's that loose woven paper that lets the ink melt inside. There was one other thing I was going to say, Cindy. I know we've got to got to get this going.
Oh, this is awesome. You're fine.
Yeah,
You know,
I
this is
know, but
great.
I think that might have been all I was going to say, was just to practice your paper, right, and to figure out. But the ones that I like the Express It blending card. And I like the Nina Solar White.
You've given
And
us
then
all such
ink,
great stuff here. Everybody's
and the
loving
ink,
it.
you have your hybrid ink, right?
Yeah.
So your Dare to Be Artsy hybrid ink. And so that is kind of what you're going to want to stamp with when it comes to alcohol marker. So the hybrid black, white, not
Yeah.
white. Sorry, that's a pigment. But if you
Our
look
yeah,
for,
our Dare to Be Artsy black and our chocolate brown are hybrid and work great. They don't bleed with alcohol markers, the OLOs, or watercolor, so they work great.
can I show you one example, Cindy? This is not with your stamps, so
That's fine.
but
Yeah.
um, I wanted to share this. I'm going to kind of leave you with, these two images, but this is one of the things that I have really been into lately. I've done a lot of blending. I've taught a lot of blending, but the flat color, and by flat color, what I mean is I'm picking up one marker and I'm using one marker to color one space. I'm not trying to do light to dark blending. I love that with the OLO. And I think this is an awesome technique for people who aren't interested in blending, but they want to add color. You
Mm-hmm.
can get, it almost to me looks like a printed look
Yes.
because it's so smooth. When it goes to the paper, you don't see any of the streaking. And so that is also a way that you can kind of pick up a rainbow of colors, add color to your images. If you want to decide that you want to do blending, you can come back, add a few more colors in pairs to do the blending. Say if you pick up the R4 to do coloring and then you come back, oh, I want to blend something. Okay, well then I know I need to get RO3 or RO2. So that's my little tip for someone who might be trying to decide how to get going.
That's awesome.
So, but and if you have questions, just tag me in the chat, and I'll kind of keep an eye on that for a couple of days and come back and answer questions. And thank you so much for
That
having me.
is
This was
great.
fun.
That is great. This has been so much fun, Lori. I'm so glad you were able to join us here today. And
Thank you.
yeah, I will definitely have you back because I know everybody's thumbs up. Everybody's really appreciating this. So I'm so glad you were able to join us
Awesome.
here. So this is
Well,
great.
thank you for having me, and I get to see you in just a couple of weeks, so I'm
I
looking forward
know.
to that.
I know. Great. We're going to see each other out in Vegas for a trade show for the
Yes,
stores. So this is wonderful. Well, I
yes.
guess
So,
that's it for today. We'll be watching for comments, guys, and Lori will check in, and we'll be watching. And so if you have more questions, go ahead and let us know. And I think that's it. So
awesome.
we'll let you go, Lori. And thanks
All
again.
right.
And you guys have a wonderful weekend. And I dare you guys to be artsy.
All right.
All
Thanks,
right.
Cindy.
Thanks, Lori.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye bye.